Hey there, readers and storytellers, and thank you for joining me on Story Unfolding, a show about challenging the world through creativity, ingenuity, and intellectual discourse. We share meaningful conversations with creators, creatives, and dreamers who take it upon themselves to make a difference in the world. We have an influence on the world around us, regardless of our intent. The only way forward is by confronting the hard truths, asking the tough questions, and letting your voice be heard. We are better together each day with our human story unfolding. Now, I am pleased to have Jeffrey Kipple on with me today. He is a author. He is the author of The Ridiculous Adventures of Serbenand, a laugh out loud sci-fi comedy adventure for all ages. When he's not taking hilarious space journeys, he is here to help raise the social consciousness with laughter, wellness, and empowerment. He is doing this through his book series, as a talk show host, and as an ambassador for Rethink Fit. So thank you, Jeffrey, for joining me, and I am unleashing the floor to you. I'd like you to tell the readers about yourself.
Thanks so much. About myself, as you shared, some cool information, and that's really what I'm here to do. My background has been predominantly in the fitness and the wellness industries, having helped start and pioneer what's known as the natural bodybuilding movement and fitness model search events. And what we found through all that is that most people view fitness in a very obscure way. And in the competitive world, people view fitness just really at that outward appearance of the body. Actually, not just in the competitive world, people who work out or go to the gym or are enthusiasts or see someone who's fit. And what we came to realize is, being fit is much, much deeper than just that outward appearance. It's about mental and emotional and social and spiritual and functional health too. So through my career, we've been spreading that message to help people really get connected to themselves, understand how to unleash their true human potential. And we've done that through all the different events and TV shows and magazines. And this book, The Ridiculous Adventures of Serbenand, is something that I started in early teens after reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and realizing that a book could make you laugh out loud. And when that series ended, I wanted to keep that journey going. So I started my own. And throughout my life, I went back to this book, either for my own break to laugh, or I had a cool idea that I wanted to add into it. And what was unique is that I finished it in 2020, which meant I had my entire life experience and wisdom that I learned over the years. So together with my wife, we really embedded messages of empowerment, messages of self-growth, messages of self-love in such a way that if the reader isn't into that, it's just a funny story. If they are into it, they can get that aha or insight moment.
Okay, I love that. That's a great way to interlace some deeper meaning into a comedy. So I know for those of you who haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It is absolutely hilarious. I got the pleasure of getting it on ebook, or audiobook, and the narrator that you have literally sounds like the guy from Hitchhiker's Guide. So it is absolutely hilarious. I love it so far. So we've talked a little bit about your latest project. Is there anything else you want to mention about what it is that you do, or if you want to talk more about your book or the book coming up? Because I know this is going to be a series, right?
It is. So I'll talk about both. I'll cover both in an aspect. So number one, because my wife, Mindy Blackstien, has been really key to the release of this book, really acting as that development editor and making sure everything worked effectively. The next books in the series are actually being co-authored. So the two of us, both names will be on there. And we actually re-edited this first book. So it's going to be relaunched, with both of our names on that. And the journey just continues. We're about 60% of the way through book 2, with book 3 already here or up in the ether, ready to come down. So we hope to have the second book out by the fall or so. And at the same time, we're sticking with what our overall purpose is to help people really discover who they are and how to unlock that ability for self-love. Most people who view self-love, can't even say those words, can't get to that state. And your health, your wellness is really based on what you're putting into your body. And putting into your body means, what are you putting into your mind? What are you putting into your mouth? What are you drinking? How are you moving your body? And what is the vibrational level of all those things that you're doing, right? If you take it in a very simplistic fashion, after the food or the water you drink or the nutritional supplements you take leave the body, it's just the vibration that remains. So what is that vibration, right? How do you want to set your frequency, and what are you doing in the day to be able to protect the frequency that you have? So much of people who have discomfort, disease, things that are growing on the body and things like that that shouldn't be there is really caused by inflammation, but really from what started up here, that emotional aspect of when people bury that, it's got to come out somewhere, right? Either it's going to come out through tears or screaming or, being creative and putting it out through a creative work, or it's going to turn into inflammation and scar tissue and things like that.
That's interesting. Yeah, you made me think. I just took a sip of my coffee, and I'm like, well, at least I'm drinking decaf. But, yeah, that makes me think. Did you have so what inspired you to go on this journey of fitness, and did you encounter any major struggles along the way?
Didn't encounter struggles. Back when we started this whole movement, first off, I had the prevalence of steroids abuse in the gyms was so high at that time, and this is in the mid 90s. In fact, there was an article done in the late 90s by Sports Illustrated, and they interviewed Olympians and athletes from all different types of sports. And of the 100 or so that they interviewed, the question was, if you were to take a steroid and know that you would never get caught and win in top 3, would you do it? And 95% of the people said yes. And then the follow-up question was, if you were going to take that steroid and you knew that you're going to win every event for the next 5 years, but when you're done, you have a 90% or higher of dying, would you take that? More than 50% said yes. So we saw there was this thing going on in the industry that athletes are taking a pathway that is not healthful. And athletes are role models. People look up to them. So we thought, okay, let's do something to clean up the industry. And so we launched this movement. And that at that time, all we knew is what we knew. And at that time, the focus was really on the body. It was, okay, give people platforms and pathways to set a goal, to visualize what they can be, and then step up on a stage and showcase that. We didn't understand the mental and the emotional part of that until many years later, until we had a realization that it's so much more, and we need to explore that.
Now, did you find this mental fitness to be kind of a bigger factor in this bodybuilding movement or in your writing?
Both. I mean, right now we're in the middle of writing a book called Rethink Fit and Be Happy. And that is really just talking about all the aspects. So, I'll say it in a very simplistic way, that is general based. It's not really related to bodybuilding or the fitness. It's just every human. You wake up in the day and it's your personal energy, your energetics that you're waking up to. How are you feeling? And based on that energy, you're now bumping into the next relationship that you have, whether it's your spouse, your friend, your coworker, whatever it is. That way that you're feeling is now projected into that relationship. And the sum of those two are impacting your mental and your emotional state. That shows up in the body. What you think about actually, presents itself in the physical. That invisible turns into, something really physical. And now in that state that you're in, which could be good or opposite, most people are having between 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day. You can only consciously hold very few of those. Well, how many of those that you're consciously aware of are positive? How many are not positive and are being ruminated again and again? And now that whole energy you're taking into your job, your career, your business, and then you're supposed to make money with that and create abundance to show up in your material world and your spiritual world. So it's people being able to connect with, okay, let me start with me. And how do I actually get in touch with my authentic self and tap into what it really means to love myself. Because if you do, then you could take it further. So we've been sharing that message either through the television shows we produce, the magazines, the expos, the events, through the books that we're writing, and directly helping people on one-to-one basis.
Now, does Servanan have this journey? I know he has his, I know without giving too many, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but I know Godfried is with him. But it seems like a very isolated journey for the most part.
You know, what was done in this case is really cool, and it's not really a spoiler, but there's a number of main characters in the book. So there's Servanan, that's this fun, loving, adventurer that's just roaming around the universe. He's from the planet Paselner. His best friend is his ship, Godfried, and they're just roaming around, just having fun, getting into trouble, just going with the flow. The other character's name is Jim, and he's a teenager back on Earth that's looking for something better, not satisfied with what's going on, always searching. And his best friend is a budgie that likes to sing every word that he says, which is really cool in the audiobook. And what happens is, out of nowhere, something bizarre happens in the universe, and poof, the two, Servanan and Jim, switch bodies. There's a whole bunch of shenanigans that happens because of that. But where it comes back to the question that you asked is that both Servanan and Jim are now experiencing life through a brand new set of eyes. They're getting to see things like as if it's that childlike view at the first time. Most people, the programming that happens for the software that runs us, the mind, the brain, happens between the age of 0 to 7. And then you've got your viewpoint on how things are in the world. But what if you didn't have any of that? What if you could just walk around and, discover gravity for the first time? Look at grass with appreciation. Look at the trees around you. Taste the food as if it's the first time you're doing that. So that's what gets to happen. And through that, it just opens up different ahas and awarenesses in a fun way, that there's some truth and depth to that.
That's really cool. That makes me think about my 18-month-old. I just see him experimenting and exploring, and he just learned how to sing Baby Shark, and he goes around doing do shock, and it's hilarious. And yeah, it's like that, that awareness, of him just experiencing things for the first time. It's hard to imagine what that would be like personally, because we've just been influenced and marred by our life experience throughout our life. It's hard to put yourself in that place. And that kind of leads me into a question I really wanted to bring up, because you answered this. So before, for those of you watching right now, before we do this interview, we do a written portion. So I get to know these creators and writers a little bit more. And one of the questions I asked was in regard to a quote that I really like by Anton Chekhov. And it's, "The world is, of course, nothing but our conception of it." And I asked, everyone what they think about this. And Jeffrey came back. I don't know if you remember what you said one of your favorite quotes is, but it was awesome. And it's perfectly fitting for what we're talking about right now. Do you remember what you'd written?
Most likely, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And, if you look at the brain as simply a storage device and a computer. And between the ages of 0 to 7, you're just taking in everything. It's whatever influences are around you. Normally, like the 5 or so people that are closest in your life, your parents, your siblings, your aunts and uncles, the people who are around you. And you're just absorbing. You're just a sponge taking that all in. And then somewhere around that age, that stops. You go into a different process where you start to experience things. But that programming that came in is up there. Your brain is just using that as a storage device because your brain always wants to conserve energy. So the responses and the reactions you have to things are things that were learned during that period. So to be able to relearn that, you need to be able to look at things and say, okay, well, that worked maybe when I was 5. I don't need to have a tantrum today about that. And it's a matter of looking at things in a different way. It's, the same thing like if someone bought a computer back in the 80s, or they had, Microsoft version 1 or whatever it is. And now they're trying to operate it on a cell phone today. It wouldn't work so well. It's not the same thing. It's a matter of upgrading the software. So if you can approach things with a childlike attitude towards it, and you can see it in a different way, once you see it in that different way, you can't unsee it. And now it can affect the way that you're changing. And maybe the way you may respond to something would be different than the normal that you've been doing. Most people say, who may not be exactly happy with all the different things in their life. Well, it's the things that you've done, that have brought you here. Well, when is now the time to make a change with it? Stop, pause long enough to be able to understand, okay, maybe I should look at this in a different way, or why am I acting in this fashion? So yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes.
It's interesting. I'm watching My Name is Earl for the first time with my wife. Have you ever seen that show?
I haven't seen that show.
Oh my gosh, it is hilarious, but it's not politically correct in many aspects, but it is hilarious because it's this guy who basically realized he's been doing all these bad things his whole life, and all this bad stuff keeps happening to him. And then he had this epiphany about karma, and he doesn't really know what it is, but he's going around with this list of like 200 something things of bad things he did, and he's trying to right those wrongs. And he's like, I got to do it right, because then karma is going to give me something good, and it's just this hilarious journey with this character going through these things of all these terrible things he did. And it just makes me think about what you're saying, like it's all about our perspective. It's how we, approach those learned experiences and just relearning. I think one of a quote that I was reading recently, I'm going to butcher it, but it was talking about unlearning being the highest form of learning. And I think that's kind of applicable to what you're talking about right now. Am I wrong? Am I missing the mark?
You know what? You have a very, very short time frame. It's about 200 milliseconds where you have that ability to catch yourself between the thought and the reaction. To be able to change things, you have to unlearn that pattern. So if you're in a situation where, I'm making this up, but you're finding yourself always getting into that same argument, it's the same thing. Well, can you pause long enough to recognize the feeling that you're having that is converting into that response, and go, wait, I need to unlearn that. I need to change that, because that response makes no sense. And I keep doing it again and again and again. So why am I doing that? It takes training. Just like you're going to the gym and you're building your biceps or whatever you're doing, and you go again and again and again, and you'll see the results over time. You're not going to see it day to day. But if you take that same approach with mindfulness and say, okay, there's things that are showing up in my life that I may not want. Where I am right now may not be exactly where I want to be. So how do I change that? Well, I've got to unlearn the things that I've been doing, because whatever I've been doing has got me what I have. The material world doesn't really lie. This is what's presenting itself. Well, how to change that? Well, you've got to switch your thoughts. But to switch your thoughts, you have to pause long enough to recognize that you need to unlearn that thought or that action or that emotion.
So how do I get my 9-year-old daughter to do this?
You know what? It's being able to present things from a different perspective. Oftentimes, you find that people are very, very hard on themselves, or the way that they try to teach. No one's ever done anything wrong. Everyone's completely perfect, because you are where you are, based on what you've been conditioned or programmed around you. And that's not anyone's fault. So many people wrestle with this guilt part, or this anger because you're doing it wrong. But it's being able to look at things differently. So I don't know the situation, but if your daughter got mad at you or didn't respond in the right way, instead of reacting to that situation in the same way that you may have when you were that age, because the programming, to be able to stop and be able to say, let me give you a hug. I love you.
Yeah.
How come you're responding that way? Or how come you're looking at this that way? And you may hear something that is like something that you've never thought of before. And then you could address that situation very differently.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone is experiencing life. You want to go really deep, but everyone is creating their own reality. You know,
Exactly.
nothing real is here until the observer actually observes. If you really get down to quantum physics and mechanics. So it's being able to change that. And when you change that, you're changing the state of that situation. And every time that situation will come up again, because now there's a learned experience that's different.
So funny, my wife and I always talk about that, you know, reality being what we make it. And we talk about everything being a human construct. And at one point, just my daughter being a kid, just being really upset about something. I don't even remember what, but she said something about like, I just exist or something. And it's just like, what are you talking about? And we realize she's hearing our existential conversations and she's just sitting there saying, I just exist. I'm just here. I just exist. And we're like, oh my gosh. But it's hilarious. But I don't want to give her.
I take it even back to your book, because I loved your book, Keeper 829. And the whole aspect of people being here for a purpose to guide things. And, you know, the human race is here sort of being monitored and being harvested, you know, if I'm just going to use a certain word on that. And if you kind of step back further and further and think of, well, where are we going? You know, now as we start approaching into the metaverse and people are really absorbing themselves in this whole world, well, what is reality? It really is what you're making it to be. You know, where do we come from? You know, there's a lot of theories and things of that aspect, but your reality is different for every single person. If you break it down and say, well, everyone is going to look at the plant on the table differently. They're a different height. They're standing a different way from it. Their eyesight is different based on all their different experiences. So they're never going to see the plant the same way you see the plant. Who's wrong? Who's right? Everyone's right.
Yeah.
And it's perfect for everybody. But everyone's going to look at that through their own model of the world. And if they ever got cut because they touched a plant and the thorn hurt them, or they had a plant and they loved it because of the smell, the energy and the vibration that they're going to be feeling towards that plant is going to be different also. And that's going to affect how they see it and how they feel it.
Right? So that's an amazing lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really being able to pause. And that was one of the things I was so key with my book was people are caught in the everyday. And if you pause long enough, and then my route was pause long enough to do something that's going to make you laugh. Because when you get into true laughter and you're laughing out loud and you're really getting there, you're not thinking about all the other things. You're in that moment of creativity. And for some people that unlocks their desire to write a book, to produce something that's creative, or just to feel in that state and being in that moment. Most people don't pause at all, even just to catch their breath. They're just living in a fight, flight, or freeze situation. And, you know, that's a situation that the body is designed for, not to be in for more than about 10 minutes. And it's designed for a life-threatening situation. In most cases, people are not in a life-threatening situation. That tiger is more a paper tiger in their mind. So if you can pause long enough, then you can enjoy yourself, or you can look at things differently, or be able to reflect and not just respond or react.
That's wonderful. I love that. I mean, with everything going on in the world, there's a lot of divisiveness and intolerance, you know, that really, you know, we just need to embrace that, you know, that we all have different perspectives and no one is wrong, you know, and I love that you're putting that out. And that's why I was so excited to have you on this channel today, because that's really what this channel is about. You know, it's about, you know, helping people see the world in a different way, you know, and understand that all of our stories are unfolding every day. And we're going to have to wrap this up today, but before we end, I wanted you to let people know where we can find you, where they can find your book, your movement. And if you haven't, I think you had some challenges for the readers as well. So feel free to tell us where to find you and whatever else you want to let us know.
So my name is Jeffrey Kipple. You can see it right below there. You can find me on most social media platforms at Jeffrey Kipple. You can visit my personal website, jeffreykipple.com, and that will take you everywhere. For the book specifically, you can go to serbanand.com, and the book is on Audible and Amazon and Kindle. Just look for it. You'll find it there. Our movement, which is called Rethink Fitness. So you can go to rethinkfitness.today and just find out a little bit more. My challenge for people is to be able to pause long enough so that you can take a moment to laugh out loud, to do something fun, to do something funny. Pick up a book that will help you. Pick up mine. I love that. Pick up the audiobook or the paperback or the Kindle version or anybody else's book that gives you a situation where you can pause and laugh. And then @mention me on social media. Use the hashtag Serbanand and laugh out loud. And share what your aha was. If you had a breakthrough, if there was that moment where you realize like, wow, this is the first time I stopped for more than about 30 seconds in the last 5 years. And during that time, you know what? I caught my breath and I felt good and I felt relaxed, or I laughed and I had the tears coming out and it just made me feel good. I want to hear. And there'll be prizes to be won. Yep. And that's really it. As you read at the beginning, the goal is to help raise the social consciousness, and that could only start with you, directly you, and collectively enough yous that do it. It makes a big change.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for all of you listening today, I highly encourage you to go check out Jeffrey's book. It's absolutely hilarious. It will give you that moment to pause and, those moments of sheer joy when you just can't stop laughing. I mean, I've had that quite a few times while reading this book or listening to this book so far. All his links will be located down below. If you want to hear some more inspirational stories, definitely click subscribe and come back for more. The rest of Jeffrey's interview is located on my website over at michaelcamarillobooks.com. So Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to have you again soon, possibly over on my other channel with Novel Excursion Travel.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Have an awesome day.
You too.
The Ridiculous Adventures of Serbanand. Written by Jeffrey Neil Kipple. Narrated by Alan Irving. From Deltic Spagnoids to the Algernon sector, Serbanand and his slightly annoying yet really super smart ship Gottfried careened across the somewhat vast universe, intersecting with Jeem and Orville in some bizarre galactic space disruption that turned everyone's world completely upside down. Or was it right side up? Or inside out? Or outside in, maybe? Well, everything changed.